Hello, Guardians. Today is May 19th, 2023. My name's Danfinity, and welcome to Destiny Digest. First of all, I want to extend a massive thank you to everybody who watched or listened to the State of PvP panel that we did last week with Ascendant Nomad, Lego LaFlash, and Very Small Hat. Everybody was excellent on that panel. It was such a fun time, and I think that you guys are going to find that you're going to have equally as much fun during this PvE panel that we have today with Above TP, Epic Dan, Talk QWERTY to Me, and Granddad Gaming. With that said, this is a long one, and I don't want to take up too much of your time before we get into it. I will say news-wise, we didn't receive any hotfix this week. We did get a Season 21 weapon tuning preview. Some of the highlights for me were that reticles are going to get a lot more information UI-wise, especially when it comes to fusion rifles getting a charge bar underneath the reticle. I'm looking forward to seeing how they bring Immortal in with aggressive frame, submachine guns, as well as snipers entering into the mix, even more so with the 10% buff in PvE. You'll hear us talk about some of these tunings later on in the episode, so I don't want to get too down the rabbit hole with that here, but I will be including all of the links for the blog posts as well as the TWAB, which had some changes to how enemy shields are going to look next season. We also got a look at the new artifact that we will be getting, the NPA Repulsor Regulator. There's going to be a bunch of changes in there, and as predicted, the Sweet Business getting an explosive payload for every 20 bursts before spinning up when it gets faster. That is going to be an anti-barrier chewing machine. They have also updated the artifact so you can specifically turn off certain aspects of the artifact in order to turn others on rather than having to reset your entire artifact. They also noted that for stabilization, starting in Season 21, Season of the Deep, with update 7.1.0, they are moving to a scheduled downtime model where they will be bringing down Destiny 2 for an expected 1.5 hours on update days. This will hopefully help with a lot of the stabilization that we've seen haunt servers since Lightfall dropped. If you want more information on weapons tuning and the TWAB, I'm going to include the links to those posts in the notes, as well as links to the Destiny Massive Breakdowns podcast versus enemies podcast and the Firing Range podcast this past week. All of them have insight from different Bungie devs. Worth a listen if you haven't yet. Now, without any further ado, the State of PvE with Epic Dan, Above TP, Talk QWERTY to Me, and Granddad Gaming. Welcome, everybody, to Destiny Digest, the State of PvE panel. How are you guys doing today?
Very good, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good, thank you.
So with these panels, I did this last week too, and everybody's in different time zones. Thank you all so much for coming together Avengers style to make this happen. First things first, what I want to do is I want to go around the Brady Bunch cube and have you guys introduce yourselves and what you do in the community, where people can find you, because some people don't make it to the end of episodes. Starting with you, Epic Dan.
I want to say hello. First, I want to say thank you for the invite. It's always a pleasure to get to hang out with First Dan and get to meet other content creators that I don't get a chance to really, converse with. So I think it's also very nice for me to get a chance to get to hang out with all of y'all. If you don't know who I am, my name is Daniel. I think most people would know me in the community as someone that does a lot of PvE helps and a lot of low man challenges. So I like to do a lot of just, some people would probably call it try hard stuff. I just like to just challenge myself and doing different challenges every season, and also spending a lot of time just helping the community do like raids and a lot of dungeon stuff mainly, and just whatever the season has to offer, really.
Fantastic. Above, what about you?
What's going on, everybody? Good morning. Thanks for having me on, Dan.
Absolutely.
I'm Above. You guys can find me at twitch.tv/above or Above Destiny on YouTube. I make a lot of PvE-oriented guide content, a lot of informational videos and things like that. And then on Twitch, we pretty much just goof around. We do a lot of community rating, grandmasters, similar to Dan, like challenges from time to time. And then I host a game show myself called Grandmaster Gauntlet, where we basically hate ourselves doing obscenely annoying and hilarious challenges. It's always a good time, and it's been a fun way to network with creators in the community. So yeah, those are the main things that I do, and I'm excited to be on the show.
Thank you so much for being here. QWERTY, what about you?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm QWERTY. You find me at twitch.tv/talkQWERTY_. Don't forget that underscore. It's happened a few times. I'm just saying. I am also a PVE player. I primarily do chill PVE content. Sometimes I'll do things by myself. Sometimes I'll do like helps with the community. That's been a little more recent, like over the last 6 months or so. But yeah, I just like to just turn on stream and just see what I feel like doing, and then people just come and hang. It's I'm still very new to the whole scene with content creation and things like that, and yeah, I'm absolutely loving it. And also wanted to say thank you very much for having me here today. I'm very excited.
Absolutely. Well, welcome in. Glad to have you. Granddad, how about you, sir?
Hello. Yeah, again, thanks for having me. I'm known on Twitch as Grandad Gaming, with an underscore as well, so you can find me at twitch.tv, Grandad Gaming _. I specialise in like raid, GM helps, solo GMs, just helping people out in the end game stuff, and just trying to entertain and not take things too seriously. A lot of my channel's known for its playful toxicity, where most of it's aimed at myself and my age and things like that. So yeah, we're just a community that like to hang and take the piss out of each other, basically. That's about it.
Perfect. Well, welcome in. So first question out the gate. How are you guys liking how have you guys liked, I guess should be the better term, season 20 and Lightfall? Are you guys finding yourself challenged? Are you guys finding new builds and everything that you're excited about? Why don't we start with you, QWERTY?
I would say Strand has been probably one of the most fun that I've had learning new builds and new ways of playing. I've primarily played a Void Hunter for the majority of the time that I've played this game. Recently going to Arc when Arc 3.0 came out. But Strand, when it first released and all of the builds and everything that came with it, it's just been so much fun. I've spent a lot more time on my Titan as well with the Titan leg exotics as well. Like, I think they're fantastic. I think it's made some of the content that used to be very challenging. I think it's made it quite a bit easier because of the crowd control that comes with it. So from a challenge aspect, I think I've found it a lot more fun, as opposed to sometimes when I do challenges, I can get quite frustrated, and I've actually had more fun than I've remembered having playing this game. And the same with the day one raid as well with Root of Nightmares. That was my first day one clear, and again, so much fun. It is like it seems to be a little bit easier than it has been in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had a great time with it. Absolutely.
Dan, what about you?
Well, I've enjoyed this season. I would definitely feel. I definitely feel that this is the first season. Well, maybe not the first season, but it's been a continual downward spiral. It's felt as far as difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to, just put that out there like that, but just every season for probably the past 3 years, it's just felt like, it's just slowly gotten, I'm just going to use the word easy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's all subjective, but it has felt that way. And while I enjoy Lightfall a lot, more than probably most people did, I do feel that the downward spiral that the PVE difficulty, whatever you want to call it, has ramped up tenfold. Now, while the enjoyment factor has also gone up a lot in the opposite direction, there isn't as much difficulty. Like Query was saying, a lot of the old content, which understandably so, was not built around the tools that we have, wasn't built around the subclasses that we have, wasn't built around the subclass reworks either. And it is very obvious what content was built around what, like, Sandbox. So while I really, really enjoy it, I do not feel personally challenged in any way, shape, or form anymore. So, I mean, I enjoyed a lot, but I also feel like I remember a time when I did challenge it and I was like, man, that was satisfying. And most of the time it's just like checking off a box now. And I mean, it's just, maybe it's because of how long I've played, or it's just you play long enough, you see stuff differently, or with a jaded eye. Yeah, maybe, I don't know. And I definitely feel that way, but I have enjoyed Lightfall for the content and for the overall package. I've enjoyed it a whole lot more than probably a lot of people have, but I also don't feel challenged anymore, and I haven't for a while.
So do you guys feel like do you feel that is everybody here is fairly skilled. Everybody here like does some form of in-game PVE in the community as content creation. Do you guys feel like that is skill, or do you feel like that is power creep season over season, kind of like compounding?
I would say, I mean, taking sentiments from both, like, I think we're the strongest we've ever been, and it's just not even close. And it's like, Strand is incredibly fun, to QWERTY's point. Like, I think from a fleshed out, like, subclass perspective, I think Strand is one of the most, like, unique aspects of Destiny that we've ever had, and it's incredibly fun to play. But I also feel like in certain ways, and people will hate me for saying this, but it's so incredibly overtuned that, like, you can walk through Nightfalls with one person on Strand, and it's just like light years easier than it was in previous seasons. Like, it's crazy the amount of utility and control that subclass has. Like, they definitely designed it well, but there's certain elements in the design process that I don't feel like maybe were thought about in the context of current endgame PvE. And I guess, like, tying back to the original question of, you know, do we think we've been stronger? And to Dan's point, certain things, like, were definitely designed for pre 3.0. So, for example, they're reworking Lake of Shadows and Arms Dealer. I believe, what is it? It's Inverted Spire is, like, rumored to get a rework or something like that. I mean, we were in double primary back in those days. The game's been around for a long time, so I think that's naturally going to happen. But I also think just 3.0 in general over the last year and a half has grown to be so strong. And it's without getting into a complete tangent of sunsetting and things like that, like, the game has been around so long. To keep things interesting as a dev, you have to continue to innovate and make things more powerful to incentivize people to use them. That's just the natural way that video games go, right? So I'm not sure how they're going to curb that, because right now I feel like the game is easier than it's ever been. You know, they nerfed damage resistance and things like that. But then we got Woven Mail that's stackable with damage resist, and it's like up all the time. And now we can you know, do our Spidey boy, like, chuck the nade at a group of enemies and everybody's just hanging there for like 5 minutes. So it's like, I don't know. I'm not really sure how I feel about the current PvE sandbox. It's definitely fun, but yeah, I think it's concerning from a challenge aspect.
Yeah. It's like, I find it crazy that they nerfed Protective Light and then gave us Resilience. You know, before the Resilience changes, you went into a GM and you actually were, one shot if you try to play like we play now. So I think it is like twofold. It's that we've got stronger. The players have definitely got more skillful, because a lot of us have been playing it for so many years. But then there's that thing of, like you said, that the old style content with these new subclasses just means that the power creep is crazy. And then, you know, they sunset things like Recluse, But then you've got the like things like MIDA, the mini tool, and funnel web,
Forbearance.
which are probably forbearance, yeah, which like recluse pales into insignificance, doesn't it, compared to any of them? But I've been saying it for the past year or so. If an old man like me can solo a GM, the game is too easy. That's what I believe. But I think that it's great that it does make things like day ones, etc., more accessible to a large group of people. But I think there still needs to be something there for the tryhards, some sort of different challenge. So if a day one's going to be at that level as it was, as Ron was, where you saw that many people getting day one clears, which is great for the game and great for people. It was my first day one clear.
Same.
It didn't feel special because, you know what I mean, we cleared it in 3 hours. But no, it was three and a half hours, and it was like I was ready for a 24-hour slog. Do you know what I mean? And the fact that we did helps I think we took eight or nine people through the day one after that to get the day one emblems, and it just took its shine off it a little bit for me. So it would have been nice if there would have been something else, maybe another emblem with, I don't know, like master day one, or just something else that they can give people who want to be challenged, you know, an extra aspect to, if they're going to make if they're going in that direction. I think there needs to be something else to keep everyone happy.
Can I add on to what Grandad said really quick?
Yes.
So I guess first of all, don't diminish your own accomplishments. Solo GMs are awesome, so good stuff. And he speedruns them, no less. He posts his speedrun times on Twitter as well.
Tongue in cheek.
He's always messaging ATP saying like, "Oh, speedrun this GM." Anyway, the thing that I think is cool is like the accessibility side of Destiny has opened up a ton, and that's like I think the start of this could kind of sound almost like we're unhappy with that being the case, and I don't think that's true. We're all, I mean, we help with PVE. And we run with our communities all the time, helping people through PVE activities and helping them get loot and whatnot. And I mean, it's because it's fun to play and see people's like genuine reaction to getting things for the first time and like helping them achieve those things. But to Grandad's point, I think the higher end of the game and like that challenge has definitely diminished. And that's not to take anything away from people who are accomplishing those things. It's just I don't think that upper end challenge exists anymore. It's definitely like that gap has been squished so much to the point where with how powerful we are now, I feel like there's not the mechanical difficulty to meet that. And I get the whole thing of like people, you know, they're not a fan of getting one shot in GMs.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people are, to be fair. Because there's like there's definitely that artificial difficulty that exists, but like I don't think we've had a raid where the mechanics were as simple as Root of Nightmares ever. Like almost Callous level, where you step on a plate, you do damage. You know, like it was you connect 5 nodes and then you go into damage.
It's connect the dots.
With it is, the raid's been soloed, so it was designed in a way where you really can lean on 1 or 2 people to heavily. It's been solo flawless, by the way, which is insane.
Yeah.
But like they
a few times
after 3 months as well.
3 months.
3 months.
Crazy.
It took years for Wrath, but like it's just been designed in a way where, you know, 1 or 2 people can really do the heavy lifting, and other people. It's a good starter raid, but I think I just don't see another Last Wish coming out. Like I genuinely don't, because the player sentiment to those, you know, what people would call legit mechanics where you actually have to like read Riven's eyes and things like that, people avoid, like it's been avoided. People just choose to, you know, do the 1 floor because it's easy, but in actuality, I'm sure some of you guys have taught that encounter, and it's like one of the most rewarding and fun things to do in the game. I've done that several times. I think I've seen Dan do it a couple times. And yeah, I don't know. I'd like to see that element definitely ramp up quite a bit. because the gameplay elements are fun. It's just that challenge that's gone right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the glass ceiling mentality, isn't it? Like there is like there's only so high that you can go, like in terms of difficult content these days. Because like I said, like I'm having a great time, but I'm not getting my fix that I usually get from doing solo content since Strands come out. It's not been the same. It's more been focusing on helping other people. And from an accessibility perspective, I do really like the fact that they've lowered the light level to get into GMs, because the number of people that have never been able to have the chance to do one, that have been able to come in and like join raffles, and it's like not being like, oh well, you need to be a pinnacle cap, you need to have plus this on your artifact, otherwise you can't get in. I think that's been a like on a more positive side of things. I do really like that. But from my perspective, from the solo stuff that I enjoy doing, I've not had that, like it's not, I don't really feel like as satisfied doing it as I have done in the past. So
I remember watching you do the solo Lightblade, and that I think that's sort of difficulty. But I remember you were getting to like the boss room and that, and I was the same. I'd started it late, and I can't wait for it to come back so I can have another crack at it. But there's nothing.
I'm not missing that GM at all. To solo, I'm not gonna lie.
But even though in the end,
if it comes back next season, I'll be ready.
Yeah, you will be. Like when that first came out, that felt like it felt hard. Do you know what I mean? And obviously we got used to the jumping back and forth, and we worked that all out and stuff. But I think that sort of difficulty for the first month, I'd say, when it first came out, was a good point, a good level. But
interesting that you say that, because we didn't have damage resist in the game at the time. That season, that was before the 40% DR was added, and I don't know if you guys remember this, but we had to run what's the void one where you used to pick up an elemental well and it would grant you damage resist?
Protective light.
No, it wasn't protective light.
Was it?
No,
it was the one after.
Light, but it was
essentially that.
It was similar, yeah.
But anyway, so it's funny you mentioned that, because I was like that 3-month stretch where that wasn't in the game yet after Witch Queen dropped.
Witch Queen, yeah.
The damage resistance we have now is just, it's too much, isn't it? I think. But I don't know. Like you said, no one likes being one-shot in GMs. It's sort of artificial difficulty, but it's a tough one. And it's like with the raids, if Bungie look at how many people have completed that raid, how many people got the day ones, that's got to be deemed, from their point of view, a success, hasn't it?
I think so, because it has more eyes on it. Like,
exactly.
Not only does it have more eyes,
through the door, isn't it?
Yeah, it's feet through the door. It's access. So, do you guys feel like, because the raid experience has basically kind of become like a, I don't say this to be a dick, but like it's basically it's kind of like a Mario Party experience. You're going in there with 6 of your buds, and you're going to complete the thing. At least in recent memory, that's kind of how raids have what they've evolved into. Do you feel that there is room for different experiences in raids across the spectrum? Like we have like you said, we have Last Wish, but we also have DSC and Ron that are probably easier to teach newer people how to play raids. What are your thoughts on raids as a party game rather than difficulty?
I genuinely don't know. Like, I almost feel, and I say this with the utmost respect to Bungie, because it is a live service game, and they're constantly having to evolve player expectations, and I mean, just the gaming hemisphere in general has changed so much, like in terms of accessibility and, but I mean, I'm seeing, World of Warcraft will have a 7-day world's first, or like even sometimes like 3 weeks, right? And that's obviously the hardcore end of the spectrum. But the longest I think Destiny's ever had was I mean, what was it like 18 hours for a world's first completion, which was, I think, for Destiny, definitely a bit too much.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think they started that with Last Wish being, you know, people were 2 under, and then Scourge of the Past, people were over leveled, and that's how they arrived at Contest. And I felt like Crown and Garden were like kind of the levels where it felt like people could complete it, but it was like really hard still. I think, and maybe DSC was like the correct tuning where, you know, like 2,000 or so teams completed it. But it still felt like a hell of an accomplishment because like Atrax was really hard on day one.
Yeah.
But I feel like they've changed it so much now with Root of Nightmares and things like that I don't know, Bungie will tend to like go back on decisions that they previously made, like whether it's, you know, making Destiny your daily hobby. I think it's, to me, become more of like a Tuesday, Wednesday game. I play a lot because I have a community to play with and I'm fortunate to do that. As a solo player, I don't know what I would be doing 5 days out of the week. Like, and that's okay. Like, variety is fine. And the same thing goes for raids. Like, they used to be, you know, the pinnacle endgame PvE experience. With Root of Nightmares, I didn't feel that, and I feel like if now they revert back and make them harder again, people will be pissed off. Especially if there's good loot tied behind it, and they're like, what is the point? I'm so frustrated. We can't get this loot. Like, our team did day one Root of Nightmares, and now, you know, they've gone and made this whole crazy, like, difficult thing. I just don't think that would go over well with the majority of the community now. So they've kind of dug themselves in a hole where if they do kind of go back on that, I don't know how that would be received by the wider community.
They would have to do an additional level on top of what they've already got, because master raids, although they're difficult, all you're doing is adding in more champions and they slap you harder. And that's not necessarily what you want. Like, I think you should just be able to just have contests there all the time, or put something in that's a little bit harder, or add something that's got, like, I don't know, a threat or a surge, like the way they do with the Grandmaster Nightfalls, just something to make it more challenging, but it's still much of the same, because that master raid with those champions, I'm like, oh, dude.
See,
What about something like the tempo mode that Vogue had? You know, you completed World First, Destiny 2, Vault of Glass. And then if you wanted, you got also the tempo mode, which had the challenges, I believe, if I remember correctly, where you had to go back into the raid, redo the raid within the 24 hours. And then, but
That
also
was
had
Kingsfall,
the
wasn't it?
challenges. Kingsfall also had it.
Yeah.
All the
Yeah.
reprised raid had
reprised
it, but
ones.
Vault also had it in Kingsfall. So what if they made something for the new raids that are not reprised raids, but that was like a tempo mode on top of it? Would that kind of be maybe a better compromise? So they're not sweaty people could go and get their day one, and then the sweatier people or people that like more a challenge could go and do it. I'm gonna call it tempo mode because that's what Volt was, but like a tempo mode where they could go in and get, like, you need to clear all the challenges again, and it's a harder difficulty, or it's a contest mode with the challenges, whatever. But had that kind of challenging mode for those people.
Dan, what do you think of that?
He's not happy.
No. That's not it. I think to Buff's point, they've put themselves in a corner with raids in the sense that as a community, we don't know where raids stand. I think the discussion around raids would be more straightforward if they came out and told us this is what the expectation should be. This is what we would like to see the average percentage of our community complete day ones, because there's too wide of a 2 teams to 40,000 teams. There's too wide of a scale. And I don't think they've ever came out, and I don't think they need to, but I think as a community, we should know where raids stand. I would argue we, as a community, we know more about how Bungie feels about Grandmasters than they do raids. Because every time a raid comes out, everything about it is different. Every time a raid comes out, we don't have Masters. We don't need Masters anymore. A year later, we're bringing Masters back. A year later, they add other stuff back. So we're constantly just having our entire raid experience changed. One raid we have like Val, where we have super tight mechanics and a lot of symbols and all that stuff. And the next raid, we're connecting the dots, you know. So it's kind of tough to like have some sort of like consistency and balancing. And like we've all have said today, the game is long in this years, and I can only imagine how difficult it is to, you know, continually make new mechanics. I remember my team for Ron, every encounter, we were like, oh, this is literally the mechanic from Crown. This is the mechanic from Leviathan. This is the mechanic from Scourge, just because it's very similar. So it made it very easy for us to like, you know, remember something from other raids and connect it to the new raids. And it is kind of difficult. I don't think my experience of what I want a raid to be is what the community wants to be. But I also don't think it should be that. But I do think there should be something in the game, like what Qwerty said, something of a higher difficulty for those of us that actually want to challenge ourselves. I don't know what that is. I'm not a developer, but it is a very tough situation to have a lot of people who are just getting their first clears of raids or even just starting to try to do day one raids. And Bungie seeing a lot of people complete it and be like, oh, we want to have more experiences like that. From a business standpoint, it makes sense. Even though people, what would I say? Even though people glorify the experience that they heard of Last Wish. I remember doing Last Wish day one, and I remember being 40 underneath in Vault and Morgan.
Yeah.
And I guarantee people would not want that experience in a day one. Even though
No.
I do think if they were to do something kind of change for, you know, artificial difficulty, it would be bringing back that difficulty where they decide to make contest mode 35 underneath instead of 20. But you're not going to like that. If you already don't like getting one shot in the GM, I guarantee you are not going to like that. You know, you're going to pump all your DPS out and see the health bar go that much. Like, you're not going to like that.
Yeah.
But it would be very challenging and require an entire team to be like absolutely perfect. But I would personally like to know, and I've felt this way for a while. I'd like to know like where we stand as a community in Bungie's eyes with raids, because there's just too much back and forth as far as like, it makes me kind of worried for Final Shapes raid. Because how successful Ron is, do they decide to make, and I don't think they will, but do they decide to do the same thing? So their last raid of their Light and Dark Saga is the biggest and the most successful one.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't have any issues with the Temple's Edge thing, but I can already see like the issues with it from the hardcore community and the more casual community. I don't want to call them casual, but the people that don't do the raids outside of a couple of times and get the exotic.
Right.
Not those of us that do it hundreds of times and then help our communities. So, I mean, I hope they decide to make a new raid that's closer to Val than Ron. I kind of am expecting Final Shapes raid to be closer to Ron, with maybe a couple extra encounters because of Witness and stuff. But I just hope that it is not like Ron. I'm sorry.
There's a couple things like for me. So one, they made it more accessible, which I think is important by making it 48 hours.
Yeah.
That should be the accessibility in my personal opinion. It shouldn't be sacrificing the difficulty of the raid and the mechanics itself.
Agreed.
And so, yeah, you're giving the chance for more people to run, but if you make it to, I mean, I hate using the word like Dan said, but like easy, quote unquote, which is proven by the fact that over 2 times the teams completed route day 1 than every other day 1 raid combined to date across D1 and D2. And that's pretty staggering.
That's crazy.
That's an insane stat. And that's not a bad thing, but to the original question of like, I mean, I guess before I get into that, like the main thing is I think in D1, one of those like, I don't know if you guys heard the common sentiment from the raid team is like, there was this statistic where like less than 5% of players ever even entered a raid ever.
Yeah.
That's not the case anymore, I don't think. Like they've definitely achieved their goal there. Take that for what it's worth. However, now like the challenge side and the esteem of the day ones that they created and that was so popular, they were doing it so well. You know, it's easily their most watched day on Twitch. It's the thing that all endgame players look forward to by far the most out of, I know myself included, like prepping for day ones, whether it's like bounties or practicing with your team or whatever it is. Like I look forward to that day every single year. And when we were in and out of the raid in 3 hours, I was like, man, that's it? And I don't know if, to the original question, if adding a Tempo's Edge thing would really accomplish what they're looking for. I think it's an interesting idea. But if any sort of cosmetic is tied to it, people will be pissed off no matter what. Because like that emblem for the original clear for the casual community now becomes not enough. They want whatever is tied behind the Tempo's Edge as well. Like that's just how the human brain works, right? You always want what you potentially can't have or like is the best thing. So like if you added more cosmetics or like an even cooler emblem behind a Tempo's Edge, people would be just as pissed as not being able to complete the original day one. So I'm not really sure where you go from here, to be honest. It's a really difficult situation they put themselves in.
It's a lose-lose situation, honestly.
It is.
So my question to that though is, so we see that they've been doing some work trying to make competitive more worthwhile in PvP, namely by putting different cosmetics behind that. Are we seeing the same type of vitriol that that you're positing we'd see? Like I don't see a lot of people going, man, that guy got the Ascendant emblem. I'm very upset that guy that got the Ascendant emblem, I should be able to get that Adept or something. Like
there is definitely that crowd in the Destiny community.
Okay.
I feel like in PvP it's less so because it's much more dependent on your individual skill against others versus like PvE, it's you versus a computer, you know? And so naturally people get more pissed off if they're gatekept from something, you know, that I guess is more under their control than like going against an actual human on the other side. So maybe that has part of it. And genuinely, like a lot of people just don't like PvP. So I'm not sure.
Maybe I've just curated my Twitter timeline very well. I don't see that a lot.
There's also no timekeeping on those emblems for comp and trials, whereas these emblems that we're looking at, we'll have to do them within 48 hours. Well, 24 now, 48 hours. So I think that's another aspect to it as well, that it's like, well, we have to do it in this period of time, otherwise we won't get it. Whereas in PvP, it's much more, I don't know if there's going to be a limited amount of time that you're going to have to get that emblem. I'm pretty sure that that'll roll over season to season, that you can get that, not the Ascendant emblem for getting into Adept or whatever it is. I don't PvP, so I couldn't tell you. But then the new trials one as well, that'll be around forever, when you've got to get your whole card with Flight of the Pigeon on each. You've got to always be ahead on each of your matches to get that. So I think that's another one of the differences as well. Like if you want to have that emblem, like you don't have to be stressed to do it within a certain period of time. It's always going to be there.
Yeah, unless there's a bug in the game, you know, like say that you don't lose any points if you leave the match.
Yeah. Unless there's one of those,
that was absolutely amazing. They bring out a new emblem for Ascendant.
Granddad was like,
and then there's a bug where you don't lose any points if you're losing. Brilliant. You couldn't write it, could you? But
couldn't make it up now.
No, but the thing about like the cosmetics and the, you know, people being pissed off if they haven't got a particular thing, I think that's the problem. Not to sound like an old codger, but it's a problem with the youth of today. I think it's FOMO is a good thing. People should like be not jealous, but I think it's a good thing.
Aspire.
It makes people.
They should aspire to it. Yeah, exactly.
Not just giving everything like with, you know, with a little amount of effort. If these sorts of things and these rewards, if people want them and they're behind something that's more skills needed, well, doesn't that give people the impetus to get better rather than, you know, just be given it? I think this thing about FOMO being a bad thing is He's crazy. It's like I don't like this thing where they give all the red borders out at the end of the season, or they make the seal requirements lower, at the end of the season.
No flawless raids anymore. Things like that.
Yeah, no flawless raids for a seal. If we could have even a try-hard seal, do you know what I mean? Where they'll never do it, but which has solo GMs in it. Even low man raids, which I know they won't do because
all flawless.
I don't think. Yeah, and anything like that. Because even rank 11 Guardian rank 11 Guardian is just solo in the dungeon. It's not solo flawless. So it doesn't mean anything. I know. I'm not saying it's easy to solo a dungeon, but maybe solo a dungeon should be rank 10, and then solo flawless should be rank 11, just to. Because they said in all these Vidocs, they wanted the ranks to be a quick way to look at a Guardian and know that they know they're good at the game, or they know a lot about the game. Different levels. But now I think it's cooler if you rank 6 now.
Just seriously, I mean, I know some of the best players just don't, and I don't care about it personally. I know a bunch of very skillful players. They could care less about even getting to rank 7. They were like, damn it, I made it to rank 7. I wanted to stay 6 for the whole season.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. We're in a very bizarre place. I think one thing that would be cool, and I actually made a video on this a while back, would be instead of adding really try-hard titles, would be instead of gilding a title, you could platinum a title or something like that. Change because they all look exactly the same. They're all gold with a number behind it. What if you had you basically prestige the whatever seal you have? You can still gild it, so you can be a conqueror times 9 or whatever it is now. But maybe there is you can turn that platinum. And it's you have to flawless every GM. You have to complete every one in under 30 minutes. You have to at least solo 1 Grandmaster. Things like that. That gives so much longevity and challenge to players, and it's the less the more casual community, I guess, could still go and get that seal. And then if that's too much, they're that's just not worth the effort. Then it's not worth the effort to them. But they're not missing out on a unique cosmetic, I guess. More so just evolving an existing cosmetic in the game, which might hopefully help. And I think that would be really cool. They could do that with so many things.
What about ornaments?
Bungie, the Bungie store wouldn't be missing out on the seal sales. You know what I mean? Because a lot of players are still.
You got the platinum version.
That's definitely why they took flawlesses out. I'm sure of it because
for sure.
You know what I mean? They've got to shift them seals on the Bungie store. That's what I'd do if I owned Bungie as a businessman. I'd say, right, we need to get more of them. Need to get more of them shifted.
So, my next question, to kind of move off of raids. So we've seen a lot of changes, primarily to GMs this season, which seem to have taken the place in-game wise for what raids used to be. Particularly because it feels like you can get a team together easier, and the difficulty is they cap your difficulty. How are we feeling about the GMs overall this season, difficulty wise as well as activity?
Difficulty, I would say, was pretty easy. I mean, I ran with Dan and we knocked them all out pretty much first try, except for I think one.
Yeah,
which was Mars Battleground, and that was second try. And I mean, I've been doing these strikes since 2017, most of them. So I don't want to load into Lake of Shadows ever again. You know, I know they can't make enough strikes to make every season new, but I don't know what you do, and I don't know. I understand that they're making Battlegrounds them just to give us some diversity in our GM playlist, but man, is it stale if you're not just helping other people who don't have as much experience. You know, I used to do GM helps the first 2 years that they came out, but I I just can't do them anymore. I've done a lot of these strikes hundreds, if not thousands of times just in general, since the game requires you to, do the playlist for whatever reason, for seals, for, weapon progress, just a lot of other ways you have to engage in these strikes already. And then when you got to do something challenging, you're doing the same strikes anyway. A lot of the difficulty is gone because of just, I know this strike in and out already. So all you're doing is going and doing a strike at a slower pace and spawn killing everything basically. Since you know the spawns, we've all done the strikes a lot. So we already know what to expect in every strike. And like we were saying earlier with Lightblade, what made it so difficult was the inexperience of what we had to expect in that GM. The same thing happened with Proving Grounds last year.
Hollowed Lair.
We all didn't know. Yeah, Hollowed Lair. We didn't know what to expect. Once we all know what to expect, we know how to cheese it. We know how to make the guy jump up and down with. You all get back to just doing a strike, and it's a tough situation because I used to enjoy GMs when they first came out, but now it's just I do each one time a season, and that's it. I think it'd be a little bit different if I did like the solo GMs. I know a lot of people do that, and I think that's where a lot of people get their fix for GMs. But if you're doing it in a more traditional 3-person fire team, it's just it doesn't have a lot going for it. I know raids don't have a lot going for it right now, but outside of it requiring more people, I just can't see GMs being the end game over raids.
We are in the minority on that because I know, like, I
absolutely.
I make a lot of GM guides, like, just on YouTube, and I mean, you'd be shocked to still see how many people struggle, and that's obviously like an influx of new players coming into the game where like maybe they don't have that perspective and experience. But like to your point, yeah, we've run the same strikes for years. They removed, what was it, like 9 or 10 strikes with sunsetting that, got rid of like a bunch of diversity we had in the playlist that kept things fresh and less repetitive. And it's like now I think if you exclude the battlegrounds, which personally I don't think should be mixed with the strike playlist, I actually think they make better grandmasters than they do strikes. Because like Mars Battlegrounds I actually thought was like a pretty fun challenge.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I mean, we got rid of some of the best strikes we've had, like Savathun Song and Pyramidion and Garden World, and like all these they were super fun, sometimes really tough grandmasters. They got rid of Hollowed Lair 6 months after it was introduced to the game. They got rid of Festering Core less than a year after it was added to the game. So like my question becomes like, what is the design philosophy there? Because it just seems like such a waste of resources to let those things go away. And I mean, we're on how many years has D2 been around now? Is it like 5, 6?
It's like 5.
6. Well,
We're 6 years into a live service game, and our strike playlist has 15 strikes in it.
I can partially answer this. The reason why so many were removed is partially because when they made the engine update to Beyond Light, they had to recode. I'm gonna call it recode. It's easier this way. They had to recode textures, right? And the way Destiny is made, if you kind of dig in a little bit, is that especially back in the day, I'm not sure now, but back in the day, very much so. Like, I'll take the example of 0 Hour, or Whisper. You know how you did Whisper? You would go on IO and it would load you into the Whisper mission, but the Whisper mission was technically tied to IO, so it would pull assets from IO, so textures, environments, so on and so forth. So when they decided to vault IO, for example, then they vault everything related to IO, so textures, assets, and so on. So Whisper got vaulted at the same time. And if you remember, when Beyond Light dropped, Prophecy got removed like temporarily, right?
Yeah.
Because Prophecy was tied to Reckoning, so it put assets from Reckoning. Yeah. And when they vaulted Reckoning, they had to temporarily vault Prophecy so they could quote unquote recode it into its own instance.
I mean, it's definitely interesting to your point. Part of me as a frustrated Destiny fan is I don't care like what the technical limitations are. Like, we have a 6-year-old game with 15 strikes in it.
I completely agree with you.
We're getting one strike per annual expansion. We get one PvP map, maybe, at some point throughout the year per annual expansion. And that just doesn't seem like enough to me. Like, I don't know if the priorities are they've shifted and they're away from the core playlist, but why have the core playlist if we're just going to ignore them? And like,
I completely agree with you. I think that
for sure
they should have been brought in somehow even more. Personally, I would take those old strike over some of the battlegrounds we've had, even if it took a little bit longer for them to be brought back in, right? But
yeah. And I guess like my final point is just, where's the incentive for players to even go into the GM playlist? You can make them as hard as you want. There's no reason for me to go into the GM playlist. Like, oh, everybody's, we're stoked about kinetic tremors on Hung Jury for the, it's been had its perk pool updated for the 4th time. Like, no one really cares about it. They're all reissued weapons from either
the rewards are
D1 or D2. None of like those weapons are just, they've either been around for 8+ seasons now and people have them and have had them for a very long time, or they're just not worth the time investment to go and sit there and farm them out. Like, I don't know. Honestly, it seems like their core playlists are just neglected across the board. PvP, seen like virtually zero content added to it. They're doing some things with trials, and I get that. And they added an emblem, and a half-baked rank system. Gambit hasn't seen maps in 4 years. Strikes have had more removed over the last 2 years than have been brought into the game. Those are major problems from a design standpoint and like player investment standpoint to me that like I'm just not sure they have answers for, and that bothers me as someone who's paying like an expansion cost and a seasonal cost. That just doesn't seem good enough in a live service game. Like, to just be completely honest, that just bothers me.
I completely agree with you. That's one of my biggest gripe also with the game currently is the time investment compared to the rewards like received, right? And that's across the game. It's not just on the core playlist and everything. And we've talked about that with Dan before. I've talked about it with multiple people, be it in PvE, be it in PvP, mainly in PvE because a lot of the game rewards centers around PvE. But yes, there's somewhere in Bungie's whole infrastructure, somebody who's in charge of the rewards is kind of missing the mark and has been missing the mark, in my opinion, for years at this point. And it is extremely frustrating, like you say, because things are lackluster. And what is the point of running all of these endgame content or just regular content when you feel like you cannot get the rewards you're looking for or any reward that feels worth your time? So I agree.
When there is, there's FOMO tied to it. They go away. They get sunset or removed, and then people are like, what the hell? I can't get this gun anymore. And it just feels like a lot of resources are being dedicated to seasonal content that like is fun for a couple weeks. But I can't imagine the resources they're spending creating new seasonal activities every single season instead of just adding to the depth of the core game. And I remember like years ago, Dado said something where he was like, the game has become so broad, but at that expense has become so shallow. And I don't think I've ever heard as true of a statement of that as it is with Destiny, because the core playlists have virtually no depth to them. You could be a new light player and go run for 2 days and have experienced everything there is to experience in these strike playlists, for example. Obviously, Grandmasters are different. But in one season, you're done with what that game has produced over a 6-year period. And I don't think that that's necessarily a good thing. If you go over to Final Fantasy and you progress through their raids, it'll take you a year or 2 to like progress through all of the Savage raids that they've got, and a lot of people are starting to move that direction because I just feel like and there was an outcry on Twitter for this. They've invested in activities that like people are kind of getting sick of, and I know we won't see the fruits of that feedback for a couple seasons because Joe Blackburn had to come out and basically address and be like, we hear your feedback loud and clear, but it's going to be a few seasons till that comes to fruition.
So with that said, and kind of transitioning into maybe the next section of this conversation, Season of the Deep is a week away. they have said that this season is one that is going to see some changes to the seasonal model, possibly even activity. What are you looking forward to in Season of the Deep? What would keep you in Season of the Deep? And what are you anticipating with all the changes that we know are coming?
I'm just anticipating more of the same, really. I think they even though they've come out and said that they're listening, etc., I just can't see them getting off this seasonal model, and all the problems that you've just mentioned about the strikes, and no new gambit maps. I think that's all a byproduct of this seasonal model. I preferred it when like Black Armory times, for not to harp on about it, but like Forsaken, where you play for as long as you want and earn as much as you want, or space it out and play as little as you want and just do it in your own time. But there wasn't that. It didn't feel as like time gated as everything is now. Over the course of the 8 weeks. I know that you had like the different forges coming out on a weekly basis in Black Armory, but it just didn't feel as bad as it does now. And
I mean, well, that first couple weeks,
more about that one.
felt like, that first couple weeks, that felt pretty bad for a lot of players. When that came out.
But I cared more about that than I do like about Season of the Plunder. Going on pirate ships. It just didn't. It's never that whole seasonal thing has never done anything for me. I actually like this season's the best out of all of them. I thought the going on the ships and stuff, whatever it's called, legendary called Battlegrounds. I don't even know what they're called.
Yes, they are.
I thought that was pretty good this season. I didn't enjoy Mars, etc. I didn't enjoy them Battlegrounds when they came out in the seasonal playlist, but I did enjoy the GM. So maybe I'm just a fussy old. I don't know.
Well, I
don't know what I want.
So, is there anything that you're looking forward to next season? Like,
going underwater? No.
Our greatest enemy?
The dungeon. I still like dungeons. I like the dungeons for about 3 weeks. Once you solo flawless them on every class and stuff, and you took people through them who want to go through them. But I've even noticed on GMs doing GM raffles and raid raffles that the interest seems to have waned. It's because people don't need the help as much, I feel, as if they once did. I used to open a raffle and it'd be like 20, 30 people in it. Now you're getting like 4 or 5 people. But that might just be my popularity's waned, I don't know. Might have nothing to do with GMs. probably more like it. But yeah, I feel like people don't need as much help anymore as they once did. But for your question, I'm looking forward to the dungeon. Yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to.
I'm looking forward to looking like a mermaid. With the
flowy tutu. It looks great.
Yeah.
It looks awesome. I guess
forgot about that. Might have to remake the warlock. He's a male warlock at the moment.
I get for me, I'm looking forward to see, like, because they said that they are going to be doing a shift. I am looking forward to seeing what that looks like.
Agreed.
Because we've had seasons that have changed how we look at the game of Destiny. I think Season of the Splicer is a big one for that. But we've had kind of the same formula for so long that maybe we've become... Maybe it was like a complacency between dev and audience that caused us to kind of have a lack of excitement about change in Destiny. And I'm looking forward to see, like, when they say, oh, we're going to change some things around for how you earn rewards for activities, I'm anxious to see what that looks like, especially since we're going in with our current light level being the max if you hit 1810.
That's a great point, because I'm definitely concerned about that. As much as people hate
I'm
the power
anxious.
grind, Like it was always something to at least like passively think about while you were playing, and with that being removed, like they're gonna have to fill it with something. Like and to your point, like I'm excited to see what they do too. And I think a perfect example of what you were talking about, like where they found a recipe for success, Winter Rivals was originally the season, and they came up with the Umbral system and the focusing. People were like, "Oh my god, this is awesome!" Like we've never seen anything like that. They took that, and then it became so formulaic that like eventually people get sick of it. Like it's like, dude, it's the same 3x5 grid we have every single season. They've streamlined it. It's definitely better than they used to be, for sure, to their credit. But it's like
the time gated stuff as well. Like you've got to wait every week to be able to progress that, like that
you play
bit with
for an
the
hour
perks
and you're
and
done.
stuff.
Yeah.
And then you've
And
got to
it's
wait
like-
till next week, and
I
then
hate that.
I think I
drives me
missed.
insane.
I just missed the like magic that Destiny used to bring to gaming. Like I remember there were just so many unique events. Whether it was the menagerie or the forges or like it all, like they were still seasonal activities, but they felt so distinctly unique, and there were so many more like just one-off secrets could happen on any given Tuesday. It's not like, oh, we're up to step 7 of 54. You know, there could be something that happens next week. Like tune in, you know, next Tuesday and see what happens. It was much less scripted. It was like Bungie was just letting their creative juices flow, and cool stuff would happen, whether it was the Whisper mission or, you know, God, what was the last forge that you had to unlock? And there was like the secret community puzzle or whatever. Burgusia or Niobe Labs. Yeah, like things like that. Even though we can't expect stuff like that every season, it was just like those drops of flavor a couple times a year were so important to the game. And like they did that with Avalon. Avalon was cool this last season. I thought they did a good job with that. But yeah, I want to see them do more things like that. And in terms of like what I'm looking forward to, I'm on the copium train that Titan Strike will return, maybe like Simon's song, bring it back, please.
Underwater.
I don't know. I loved Titan, so I hope they do it justice.
Yeah.
The density of that location, just being able to go into the shipping containers as well, like
dive down into the arcology.
Yeah.
I took that for granted. 100%
arcology
while I
is
was
so
there.
cool. It's so cool.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope
Anyway.
that's where the dungeon is, personally, because I wanted a raid there initially, and now it's like, oh, you're getting a dungeon. It's like, well, give it to me in the arcology. Just love God.
The arcology is so underused, though. It was such an underused area when it came out.
Savathun's song was in there.
There was also like
the Ace mission, I think, as well.
The Ace mission,
well.
and there was also some story mission when you were doing the Red War mission. There was one where you would go all the way and you would enter kind of the center of the arcology, which was a huge place. And I was like, why did you never do? Yes, why did you never do anything with that? Because it's such an interesting place.
Well, never say never. Maybe.
True.
We'll
No,
see
I agree, but yeah. I will not hold my breath for that. But to a boy's point, I was thinking about this. What if the difference is that when they release like the Forges and then the Drifter season, we're gonna gloss over that because there was not as much content for PVE per se, and also Opulence season. What if the difference was that in their mind, when they were creating these activities, they were more made for a way longer time period, because back then there were 3 seasons a year. You had like way more time to do stuff. That was also talked about, how we kind of feel rush every season to do everything, whereas back in the day you had a full year technically, and we still do, but it's not quite the same feeling. What if like the difference is also in the production side, where these are going to be around for a full year. They need to be entertaining and rewarding, I guess, enough for people to keep going back to them. And they did, I think, nail with the menagerie. But what if that's one of the biggest issues, is that they're also so focusing on seasonal stuff that are so short that they kind of don't think about the annual period of time where we have to play. Yeah, where we have to play these activities, and they kind of start to feel so repetitive because they're based on the same model as usual. So
Do you guys
maybe
ever
that
go back and
influences.
play old seasonal content, like from the previous seasons?
Depends if
Last-
it's rewarding.
Last year I did, and it was mainly to get red border weapons that I hadn't bothered to get during the season, and because at the end of the year I was like, or it was the third season. I had a bunch of red borders that I needed to go after, and I was like, you know what? I'll do one of each of the activities a day until I get the red borders knocked out. And that was actually fun. Like, but that was me creating a loop for myself of like, okay, I'm
And
going to
it's
go.
also FOMO, to be fair, because you were like, these are going to be gone if I don't.
Well,
Yeah.
at the same time, it was like, oh, I can do Leviathan. I can I'll do one Leviathan run. I'll do like a plunder, like I'll do a plunder run.
Yeah.
I'll just do those things. I'll do a Dares of Eternity because I know that those are active hotspots for me to go and get those red borders. And as I started knocking them out on the lists and the list of activities got shorter and shorter, it got a little monotonous because I was like, okay, fine, I'll do 2 per day on this location. But I felt that creating that loop for myself worked for me, but there needs to be something like that that's in the game for players to do as well. That isn't just a self-created like challenge, or maybe that's what they're looking for.
I think the only one I really replayed was the not the override, but the other one that was in Splicer.
Oh yeah.
I can't remember. Yeah, that, because that was super rewarding because the first 3 times you did it in a week, you could get either a weapon with multiple perks or you could get a high stat piece of armor. So it was like super. It was not super long. You could also cheese some of them. Let's not lie to ourselves there. But they were like not super long. They were fairly engaging and they were extremely rewarding. And I think that goes back to a point that we talked about earlier, is that the game does not feel extremely rewarding, and the seasonal activities for a lot of people are not rewarding.
And variety is important too. Like multiple
Mm.
bosses is like a very important thing, I feel like, in those
Yes.
activities. Keep it fresh.
Yeah.
Like, Dares did that really well.
Because I was thinking, like, do we look at things like Menagerie through rose-tinted glasses? Because, like Splicer, I totally forgot about Splicer. I did enjoy that season, but then
It was a good season.
in a way, I was thinking, oh, we're going to get this again. The season afterwards, we're going to be dunking moats. We're going to be, and I'm thinking, if they brought Menagerie out now, would it be as good as it was then? Would we still be would we be as impressed?
They did, and that was Season of the Plunder.
Kind of.
Yeah. It's like, have we just become jaded? Like, are we expecting too much from them? I don't know.
Because like I think it would be strictly because the loot from Menagerie was very, very good.
Until they fixed it.
There were rotating weekly bosses that like kept it fresh. There was a seal tied to it, and that shadow was hard to get. Like when it originally came out, and it had a master or like an underleveled version.
Master
And
version.
there was an accomplishment, I think, for also doing it with 3 people instead of 6. Like there was all sorts of like depth to that that I think added a lot of replayability to it that you just don't see in current seasonal content.
Yeah, the seasonal seals now are just you've just got to be there, haven't you, on that particular week and get the do the steps
checklist.
it's just
I
a
never
checklist.
am. I get
There's
so
nothing-
bored after the second week. I fall behind on the story, and I'm like, I can't be bothered. To be honest, and I know I'm in the minority on that. Like it just seasonal content does not.
No,
do it
I'm
for
so
me.
behind as well.
I cannot sit there and go do steps 7 through 12 and then 14 through 17. I'm like, ugh.
It's usually like a battleground, and then
you go
like,
run
it's
a
like a little bit of
battleground, listen to some
story.
dialogue. That's
Exactly, battleground. Like go back, and it's always the same thing every week, right? So of course you're kind of disengaging. Because why would I do that?
I knocked out the Lightfall campaign, and then I did all of the story bits, and I was like, okay, well, we'll do GMs. I'll do that for a couple weeks, and then because of work, I had to do a couple of Sundays off, so it's basically been like a couple weeks off from stream but also a couple weeks off from Destiny where I'm playing other games, and I'm finding myself refreshed in a way and maybe looking at it a little bit differently and anticipating Season of the Deep more because of that, I think. But I don't know.
I'm very hopeful. I am. Like, I really hope they shake it up and they knock it out of the park. Because I mean, at the end of the day, like, all of us play a lot, and we want the game to just be stellar. And I think the most frustrating thing with Destiny is you always see the potential. It's right there, and you're like, dude, just please, just do it. Just do the thing. Come on, you got this. But I don't know.
My fear is the 1 step forward, 2 steps back that Bungie always does every season. So whenever they have any positive things coming, I am always cautious because I know that even with the changes to like the grid system, my fear is what's the caveat with that change,
Yeah.
So I think for me the big thing is I think the dungeon's going to be dope, but like outside of that, I'm like, what is coming next season? How much of if they're pulling back on how much of I gotta log in every Tuesday and do step 1 through 7. Like if you're pulling the reins off, what's the caveat? Like what's the other side of this this coin that you're flipping? Because you've historically done that as what we were talking about earlier with the Umbro system. The Umbro system that first season was fantastic, and they were very very surprised at that and had already made changes that they couldn't go back and change next season, and then it took them a year to finally start bringing it back to what the community initially liked. So I think the dungeons are going to be fantastic because their dungeons are always really good. I think the loot's going to be really good from it and the gear, but outside of the dungeon, it could be an off season for a lot of people outside of the super hardcore,
Yep. That's a great point, actually, Dan, too. Like, I don't know, thinking about that specifically, I hope they do something really cool with it. And to your point, like, it usually is 1 step forward, 2 steps back. But, I don't know, man. I'm nervous, too.
Yeah.
Until they prove me otherwise, they've shown me too many times that. So I just, at this point, I'm just hopeful. And if the 1 step forward happens and 2 steps back, I'm like, well, that's Bungie.
Well, yeah, that's.
You won't be disappointed, at least.
I won't.
I'm more nervous.
So.
I'm more nervous about the season after and them not bringing back Wrath of the Machine. Like everyone thinks it's going to be like that. I don't think they are going to. I've just got this fear that they'll just bring Leviathan back.
I think it's Leviathan.
Yeah, yeah. I hope it's not. I hope
it would have to rework so much of that raid to make it meet current standard. Like,
I have a headcanon that the reason we got it back, like the little pieces, like last season, was them trying to like slowly make sure the Leviathan's working.
Yeah.
Because it was one of the stuff that got pulled because of the textures, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was their way of putting all the stuff in the game and seeing, did this part work? Did this part work? Did this part work? All right, let's try to bring Leviathan.
What if they drop Leviathan and then all of the other extended?
Please.
I did make I remember having a theory with my chat a month ago, and I was like, what if they say Leviathan, but then they say Leviathan in the umbrella of every raid with it?
Yeah.
I mean, that could be cool, but then that's just me being hopeful. And they have like some super long raid, and it's like here's like the world's first for Leviathan, not Leviathan, this one, but Leviathan the every raid back to back type of thing. Because you could, this is probably the only time you could do like every raid back to back, and it doesn't feel too long, since a lot of those raids are like 30 minutes. And unless they make big changes, you could probably still knock out an hour of like every Leviathan. So I like Granddad said, I don't think it's Raph. I love Raph. I want it to come back, but I
do. Absolutely love that raid.
I see the writing on the wall of it being Leviathan. That's just
because there was always that comment. There was that comment about the Crotas coming back as a dungeon, wasn't there? But how would that work time wise? Because we've got this new dungeon coming out now. Surely that's not going to be Crotas, is it?
I don't. It's
Is
not, it
it?
wouldn't be crowded.
I don't think so.
It
No,
would be
so-
it would be the September or no, it would
It'd
be
be
December
September.
season or
December.
November season.
Right.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, so that
December.
Oh, okay.
it'd
Yeah,
be the
yeah,
last season. Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
So there's still time for him to bring
Mhm.
that back. Yeah.
Are we getting the special mission rotator next season, or is it the season after?
I think is this coming up season.
Okay. That'll add a little bit of longevity, hopefully, to some
Well,
of
it's
it.
weird because, like, as we've been saying, a lot of this content and a lot of this gear,
Hmm.
your desire for it is based off of how much you play.
Hmm.
You know, I think a lot of the stuff coming back is really cool for those people who are coming back to the game or missed out. It'll be really cool for them to check it out. But you
Mhm.
know, like Above said earlier, I've gotten 4 hung juries now. It doesn't intrigue me anymore.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people coming to GMs like, oh, I missed hung jury. I'm finally getting one.
Hmm.
Because they keep sunsetting and then deciding to bring it back 6 months later.
Yeah. Now, if they
So
brought back
sucks.
0 Hour and Whisper with new loot, I'd be
Yes.
like,
Oh, yeah.
Now, I'm going to eat my words because I'm 100% with you.
Same.
I'm going to 100% eat my words because if they brought back
they
0
do.
Hour and Whisper, I'd be all over it.
oh,
Yeah.
me too.
Yeah.
Me
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, I would. I would.
100%.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, I thought you were saying that this is, and I'm like, hey, listen. Sorry.
I now know
Yeah.
something
Asterisk
different. I'm
right
able to
now.
change.
Yeah.
So,
These are the
Do not-
exception.
Do not use my words against me.
I now have new information. I am able to change. All right. Well, I think that puts us in a pretty good spot. Puts us in a pretty good spot to do some audience questions. How's everybody feeling? Like an hour in.
yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, great.
Good. It's been a fun conversation so far.
Yes.
So I think leading from that conversation that we just had, Clancy 5000 asks, tough question, but you're now in charge at Bungie. How would you like the seasonal model to evolve in the coming year? What systems or routines are you worn out with? I think we've already talked about that. And would you change things without risk of a dip in weekly player engagement?
Whatever the budget is for seasonal content,
Mm-hmm.
move it to everywhere else in the core playlist.
So a season of the
I was
health.
just gonna say that. Yeah,
Yeah.
season of recovery.
People have been talking
keep
about
the cutscenes and then just let me click on the director. Can I watch the seasonal video
that. Mhm.
instead? That's what
Yeah.
I would do.
I think the amount of money that's made from the season pass every season, like obviously there's 4 of them a year, and sometimes some of us like buy them in advance with pre-orders for expansions, and then some people pay at the time. I
Mhm.
think they really want to do like a whole getting your value for money out of that season pass by doing these seasonal activities and this seasonal loot and stuff like that. But I sometimes feel like it's too much, because you're still at the end of the day paying mainly for an expansion to get 1 strike and 1 PvP map,
Mm.
and maybe like and then something that's reprised. And it's like, well, could you not just like take some of that you're doing with the seasonal stuff and just kind of inject it into the expansion, so it's something that will have that longevity for like from the next expansion to come, and it's not just going to disappear after 12 months.
Yep.
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
thing that I've seen a lot of people talking about the seasonal pass, like being able to carry over seasonal passes that you've purchased in the past and maybe didn't fill out all the reward for. So say you didn't hit 100 on it, you would still be able to work toward it and on it with your experience as you're going along. I feel like that would probably be a positive change to make. I can't remember where I saw that first, but it was somebody on Twitter.
Yeah.
And I'd credit you if I remembered.
For me, I think seasonal model mostly comes down to, just getting rid of the formulaic. I mean, we've talked about it a million times, but like for me, I think one of the things that they did so well was they integrated you into the world of Destiny so much more than the current seasons do.
Mhm.
You spend a lot of time in one area, like too much. You're in the same place over and over and over again. Whereas like before, I don't know if you guys remember flashpoints, but like there'd be a different flashpoint every week. Typically the whatever would release in the season would be associated to that flashpoint, and you'd be able to go and like actually appreciate the planets a bit. Whereas like now I feel like I don't go back to any of the destinations almost ever. There's no reason to go back. And you don't really
You mean
get
you
to...
don't go to get your pile of bright dust from the seasonal challenges? You don't go to
yeah.
Europa and...
God,
That's
I
the
mean,
only time I go.
it's exactly. And it's just like...
Same.
When you bouncy hard in.
That's
And
when
you
I want my
exactly.
large pile of bright dust at the end of the season. It's like, go to Cosmodrome and do this, go to this planet and do this. It's literally the only time I go there.
And I think that's like, it's like one of the most beautiful parts of Destiny is like going and exploring the planets they've created and this huge universe that we all like know and love, and you just never get to see it. Like, because there's just, they give you no incentive to go back there. So I feel like if they integrated the story into the wider universe of Destiny and they didn't confine you to just one playlist all the time, and they kind of like opened it up to like be more inviting to like the overall universe of the Destiny as we know, like it'd be so much more interesting to me, at least, because it feels much more community driven in that aspect. Like, oh, you know, this week we need to go find out like where the story beat is or whatever, and then like, you know, maybe have a couple like surprise things that pop up on that destination. I feel like that would keep it so fresh. And like Dan said, like, Season of the Health is so overdue, from constant error codes and server issues and emergency maintenance and you know, the lack of content going into the core playlist. I would love to see an entire calendar year where there's 1 or 2 new strikes added every season, or like a strike, a PvP map, and a Gambit map, you know, a rework of the rewards and new weapons brought into Grandmasters. Like, they could take all that energy they're putting into seasonal activities that have limited replayability after you've gone through it that first 3 months, and flesh out the game more for, you know, the replayability. After all, like, a lot of this, it is a hobby for like most players that play. And so, like, if you're gonna, what are the 3 things that people replay the most? It's PvP, strikes, Gambit, and they get like virtually no love. So that's just sad to see.
Granddad, what about you?
Sorry, I was just. What was the question? I was listening to. I was just agreeing with everything that was said, but I've forgotten the original question.
So you're in charge of Bungie. What would you like? You're in charge of the next year of seasons. What would you do to maybe shake things up? Damn it! Hold on, Clancy. I'm sorry.
You've got the reins. What are you doing?
How would you like the seasonal model evolve in the coming year?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with what above said about scrapping the seasonal stuff. You know, the thing, logging in every Tuesday and doing that one activity, which we all always know what it's going to be. It's going to be banking something or you know, procedural, going through the missions and going to every Tuesday. We always know where it's going to be. It's going to be in the helm. So I'd scrap that. Bring some weapons into the core playlist, such as like into the GMs. Even though I'm not a fan of Gambit, I do enjoy playing it when I'm doing my powering up at the start of the season, which we're not getting next season, so I'm worried about that. So if they did put some new Gambit maps in and change the way it works a little bit, because I still think the heavy ammo economy in Gambit is just bought. I think that needs looking at. But a lot of that might be because of Bricks and Beyond. I think that's why it's a bit weird this season. So I do new weapons into the core playlist, and there was something else. No, it's gone. No, it's gone. No, yeah. I just show a bit of love to the main like ritual activities, basically. Definitely.
I think something that I would possibly do would be to take, instead of stretching out the telenovela approach of content, instead of stretching that over 8 or 9 weeks, just slamming it into 2, give you a bunch of bang right at the start, and then let you go from there. That would
With a couple sprinkles.
Yeah,
just a couple
sprinkles of like secrets, like secret stuff.
Yeah.
Just like a little bit of sweetener toward the end. It would kill daily or weekly population probably, which is probably why they don't do it.
That's exactly, yeah.
But just front load it, give people the bang for their buck early, and then see where sprinkle in challenge and secret stuff the rest of the season.
I can't agree more, and I have to comment on it because it's so true. The seasons blend together. Like, I don't feel like when a new season drops, it's like you're literally on the game for 2 hours, you've done everything there is to do, and then you're locked out again. And you're like, I just did this last Tuesday. This is a new season. Like, where is the burst and injection of content that, like, I'm looking to sink my teeth into, and you can't because you're locked into this rhythmic, like, cycle, and I don't know.
That was something. Remember when Luke Smith way back in the day did an interview where he talked about Destiny as a living world, and so I think part of what that is this telenovela approach where they have you come in every week and something's changed and they're like, hey guys, it's Tuesday, guess what the Cabal were up to. And like it's like that's I think they wanted to do like a slice of life thing with it, but in a game that is as action packed as Destiny can get, it feels slower, and we all know how Guardians hate going slow. So it's and
I think it's okay to do the weekly thing, but like, man, just the beginning of new seasons or an expansion, I will never ever forget the launch of Forsaken and feeling so unbelievably overwhelmed with stuff to do that I didn't even know where to begin. And I've never had that sense of like wonder and just like I could go do the Tangled Shore stuff. I could go explore the new Lost Sectors. I could mess around with all these new systems they had in place, the double special and collections and seals for the first time. And, then you get to the Dreaming City, and that's a whole nother layer that's only for endgame. And then they have things cycling in. Like, I mean, you have the weekly Ascendant challenges, and then the Ascendant challenges turn into the raid, and then the raid, when it's beaten, then unlocks the curse on the Dreaming City, and then 3 weeks later, it's the Shattered Throne. And now all of a sudden, you're 2 months deep after an expansion, and you feel like you've just gone through that first cycle. And I feel like they did such a good job, like, leading you on with stuff without time gating you, because a lot of it was a surprise that unfolded based on player action, which I thought was really cool. So
yeah, it didn't feel time gated, did it? But one of my friends he's an absolute, sorry for me turn of phrase, but he's like me, he's a pervert. He wants every seal as soon as they come out, and so he'll log in every Tuesday, and as soon as that seal is available to get, you make sure you've got it, and move on to the other thing. Got all the seals and everything. And he took a big break from the game for his standards anyway, of about I think it's about 3 months. And he's just started playing again this week, and he said it feels great because he's just got like loads to do.
Yeah. Maybe that's the way to do it.
Yeah, maybe
we just have to start it at the last like 3 weeks of the season. Do like that, like whatever it is, Festival of the Lost, Dawn, and whatever it is for that last 2 weeks. A week before, just do all the seasonal content.
Yeah.
We're getting we might get a dungeon or a raid though. We'll get a dungeon or a raid at the start. Yeah. And then just do all the seasonal stuff at the end. Gotcha.
Yeah. Just take a big break. But then you probably your Twitch channels would tank then, no, wouldn't they?
Oh yeah. Every single one.
It's just like you can't I'd love to. I used to play a lot of Warframe. A lot of Warframe on Xbox, but it's not cross save. I'd love to start that again on PC, but I just know that
the time sink.
I wouldn't be able to do both. Yeah. I wouldn't be able to keep up with Destiny and Warframe. That's why I don't mind the odd single player game. I agree with if they could just make let more of it be available at the start of the season and not have this waiting thing. And the way they did it in Forsaken was near enough perfect.
Because if you do
find
it right,
being really interesting though, because like I think one thing people forget is that I think they had one of those GDC discussions where they talked about Forsaken a year ago, where they said the reason that they front loaded so heavily was because they had to make such a first impression
After the
on
first year.
entire community from the first year. Yeah, and they also, I remember them mentioning that they had to basically shove everything in as if no one was going to play after the first week. So they had to just put everything in there. And I sometimes wonder, which I don't want to wish this on them, but like I know we all want that Forsaken filler back, like again. But I wonder if we'll never get that back unless things get to that point again without having to say it. 'Cause I don't want to have to put that on them because I think we all want
we
the
want
game
them
to
succeed.
survive and stuff. But it's just I remember, living through the Red War campaign and living through that and seeing those player numbers and just the no one logging in on Tuesdays, and then it explodes with Forsaken. And I just wonder sometimes, 'cause I know I hear it a lot, about people. I don't think it's rose tinted glasses. Some people like to say Forsaken is rose tinted glasses. I don't agree, but I definitely think a lot of people pine for those days again. And I wonder if we'll never get that simply because Bungie as a studio don't feel that they need to do that.
They're not under the gun.
They're not under the gun.
They have no competition.
They
and
also
that
have
was
no competition.
bad. That was like they had urgency back in the day because that was off the back of the very public, extremely large community summit where the community was unbelievably unhappy with the state of the game. Funny enough, I don't know if you guys heard this report, but like apparently Forsaken sales didn't meet Activision's expectations whatsoever either.
Which
thought
they
it was
never
fine,
do,
yeah.
though.
They did. That is true. That is true. And I think like, yeah, they're so focused on the daily login numbers now, and it's become so formulaic. But I think if you did it the right way, where you dropped a heap of content at the beginning, you wouldn't have to force player investment and time sink every week, which artificially inflates player number. Like if you let people go through and actually play the content, and then you as a developer surprise and delight people with those secrets that we talked about sprinkled in, or like an evolving world, which they've mentioned a million times, that they want this to be your Tuesday hobby. If they do that the right way, where they lead you on with stuff in game, you complete an activity and you're like, oh, that commentary at the end, they alluded to something that could happen next
There's something
week.
in
Like,
that cave.
I should go check out. I'm gonna log in next Tuesday to see like what's up, instead of it being like, oh, okay, there
Please
is more
tune
next
in
week.
on Tuesday.
Eris Morn is gathering
13.
reports. She'll be back
Your
with you next
seatbelt
week.
on. That's all you get. Like it's like you're so
That's
like
all,
just
folks.
hamstrung, and it's so scripted, and just I don't know. It's lost that magic for me.
We don't know what next season brings, but I'm hopeful that some sort of shakeup comes with it.
Do you like not knowing?
I do
This
like
is for
not
everyone,
knowing.
basically.
I do.
I do. I miss the very vague roadmaps. I don't like when they got as detailed.
Yeah.
I don't like when they got as detailed. They're like this exotic, this date, but like when there was like the larger blocks of like here's these core events that are gonna happen, like be around for it. I was all for that. I was like, oh shit, like I have stuff to look
those were
forward
good.
to. This is gonna be dope. I'm excited to check it out, but
There's a reason why they got away from those, though.
I was gonna say I was mentioning that, and I was asking because I definitely feel that a lot of the like formulaic just log in every Tuesday is them just being like, we don't want to deal with this anymore. Cheers, just every single week, you know what to expect, because they did the kind of vague roadmap and everyone complained. They did the here's everything roadmap and then
Everybody complained. Everybody
And
complains
so
anyway.
they probably
Corridors of
just did
Time with Bastion being on there, dude. You remember that? Oh,
Yeah.
people were
That was
so
absolutely-
angry.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's just this. I wonder, like, how can? Because I really like you said, I'd really like to have some mystery back in the season. I don't want to know, like, okay, I know I don't need to play for 3 weeks because on this day the exotic's dropping. You know, I miss that. Hey, I found this thing. Did anyone else find this? I didn't find it. Let's find this together. Oh,
Farm
there's
Arc
an
with the
exotic
Whisper
right
mission.
here.
Farm Arc
Yeah,
with the
so,
Whisper
like,
mission.
And I wouldn't be opposed to them guiding players a little more because they didn't have the in-game messaging system that they do now.
Right.
But like if the week before, like that Friday, they're like, hey, next week there's gonna be something cool. Like
That's what I would like. Yeah, just
that would be such a good way to do it. Just like tease players and be like, and then people are like, oh, I definitely should log in on Tuesday and see what's good.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask 2 more questions. This is a 2-parter, but it's all in one thing because I think it's really good. Kyoki asks, what are your criteria for assessing the challenge of a particular activity? What elements are you looking for in challenge? Examples like communication, mechanical play, etc.
So what you look at, like what makes you assess it as being a challenge?
Yeah. What do you look for in an activity for challenge? What are the criteria for assessing the challenge of a particular activity?
I could speak on Root, like Root of Nightmares in particular.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well.
If I ever feel like there's an encounter where I'm just sitting around and I don't feel integral to my team, like
Everyone has to be doing something.
second encounter, for example, 2 runners, everyone else is just literally standing there killing ads over and over again. There's no mechanic. If I ever feel unchallenged from that standpoint and I'm not having to worry about something I'm thinking about while I'm killing ads, then that's a failed mechanic for me. The day 1 damage checks, a lot of times those were the deciding factors. You had to be optimized. Those damage check, people were 2-phasing bosses commonly on day 1. That was not good enough for me. A lot of times it came down to clutching up, playing revives. You didn't really see that in Root of Nightmares, because you would 2-phase a boss, and all of a sudden those revives, you might lose 1 or 2 people, but you're not concerned about, oh my god, we only have 1 life left, or our light fading timers at 11 seconds. If someone goes down, we have to instantly get a red. Like, that didn't exist. That just wasn't part of the day 1 experience. And I feel like the bosses were just significantly undertuned. And I think from that standpoint, you can kind of start to see things that maybe were missed. If you can look at a raid and someone has solo flawlessed it and they haven't even exploited mechanics, like they're literally doing them legitimately, to me that's an issue. The day 1's boss health pools, that's an issue. When you're going into the GM playlist and people are knocking out 6 GMs in 2.5 hours first try, and it's the pinnacle endgame activity in your game currently, that's an issue for me. There's not that sense of struggle and reward in Destiny anymore. And I'd like to see it come back in some capacity, whether it's more complex mechanics. Because, like, actually, I was going to bring this up earlier when we were talking about Levy. If they brought those raids back in their current state, they would... It would be, people would be bored of it after their first clear. Can you imagine bathers in Levy? You'd chuck a strand nade and you'd stand there for 10 seconds, and then you go to center and you'd blow up the bells, and it'd be over in literally
It'd be terrible.
30 seconds. It would be a horrible encounter. The same thing goes with Callus. That boss would get steamrolled with what we have
Spire
today.
boss.
Spire's the same thing. So I mean, in that regard, they'd have to make a lot of upgrade. That's the only thing I actually have against it being Levy, is they would have to overhaul so much that I actually think it'd be too much work for the task force they currently have on Destiny. Because let's be real, like, the elephant in the room is they're working on another title, and they're splitting their workforce. At least it seems like, I'm not saying Destiny's on the back burner, but it might not be their number 1 priority at the moment.
Center stage.
So I don't know. I think those are definitely some contributing factors for me. Is like, there's just not that pain you had to overcome anymore. Like, it's just, you go in and you're like Dan said earlier in the show, you're just checking off a list, and you go through and you do it and you're done. And I think that's kind of the problem at the moment.
Yeah, that's like with DSC and VOW, even though like the mechanics were sort of that old Destiny thing, as they introduce you to a different part of the mechanic, after each encounter. So you start off with, a little bit about it, and then in the second encounter, you've still got the mechanics from the first, but with a little bit added on. In Root, they just didn't do that, did they? Apart from planets, which was... And we've all heard like the conspiracy stories about that, but
Yeah.
It still had the light and dark, but the moving the planets was a little bit different than shooting the nodes.
And that's the most universally loved encounter because everybody's pretty much involved.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like-
Yeah.
exactly.
Ad clear is so important in there because all the other four are all,
Yeah,
focusing
rely
on
on
other
that.
things.
Sorry
Yeah,
to
I-
cut you off, Grandad, but yeah, I
I
I
agree.
don't know.
Yeah, it's like when you Sherpa that raid, it's sad. You can do if you're up against it, you can find yourself just going. Or you in this one you can just add clear this encounter.
Mhm.
Oh, actually, in this encounter as well, you can add clear. Oh, in this encounter you can add clear as well. It's like, and then but you're not doing yourself. I don't call myself a Sherpa, so it doesn't really affect me. But I'm more of a helper. I'm like glorified LFG.
Yeah.
But you still don't feel like you're doing it justice if you don't give people jobs to do. But there's not that many jobs, is there, to do in that raid?
I usually ask people, how much responsibility do you want? And then
Yeah.
like based on what they tell me is usually where I put them.
Yeah. And then the challenge, another thing I look for in challenge is like with soloing GMs, a lot of it's down to, rather than challenge, it's more like patience, isn't it? And knowing what class to use and things like that. But like I remember soloing, I think it was Corrupted for the first time, and that felt like an achievement. Like more and more these days, because like Dan said earlier, we know all the spawn points, and even Proving Grounds, it felt like an achievement. Birthplace of the Vile, but the older ones, it feels more like it's just a battle against boredom and patience, and not pushing and not being too aggressive. So it's less about skill and difficulty. It's more about just not falling asleep.
I think I was the same. That's how it started.
Yeah.
I was bored, and I was like, I need something to do, and that's what I'm going to do. And just started soloing GMs. And I was like, I don't know what else.
When you have
I've
to
done
make your own
everything.
challenges,
Yeah.
that's a pretty clear indicator that that challenge doesn't exist naturally.
Yeah, you go looking for it. Yeah.
And a lot of the community content in the directory, if you look this season, is self-curated challenge. It doesn't exist in the game right now.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't. Whether it's solo Root of Nightmares, solo GMs, solo flawless, all dungeons, all classes, back to back to back, like whatever it is. People are doing crazy stuff to keep themselves entertained because I don't think that exists right now.
Well, part of your whole shtick is challenge that you
Literally
created.
self-torture.
Yeah.
They call it masochism.
Yeah.
No, like literally. I mean, and that was, it started a long time ago.
Yeah.
And, funny enough, some of the easier grandmasters, Cordy will find out very shortly, are the harder
wait.
ones because I stack on like just the most cursed forfeits. Like for those who don't know, watching or listening, I do a show, Grandmaster Gauntlet, where we basically come up with just like cursed forfeits that you have to do in that Grandmaster to basically go against the meta. So like we'll ban Strand and we'll ban Well, and we say you can't bake the final boss in Lake of Shadows, so you actually have to experience the boss room, or like just whatever, like random little fun challenges. And it makes it so much more entertaining because it's not the same monotonous spawn points. It's not the same overpowered subclasses that we're using. And I'm sure we'll get the comment of, if it's so powerful, just don't use it, which I just think is such a bad argument anyway. But yeah, so that's the number one indicator for me, is the more self-made challenges that you're seeing shows the game's not at that point where it's actually giving the players the challenge they crave. If master raids were actually more than just throwing in champions, I think you'd see a lot of endgame players spending a hell of a lot more time in there if there were actually added mechanics. But I know, again, that comes down to their resources, and they just don't have them available to go in and code added mechanics and challenge into existing raid encounters. They've said that multiple times, so I don't know.
Yeah.
So the second part of this question from Kiyoki was, when the top players are consistently getting better, do fresh players have a chance to catch up? Dan, why don't we start with you?
As the top goes, the floor comes up as well. Like it's the reason everyone can do everything in the game is, as I keep saying, the more tenured players become,
Mm-hmm.
the more the baseline of experience is. Whenever a new person comes in, they just have YouTubers, streamers who can flood them with years of information in minutes. For a lot of us who played from the beginning and had to learn, I remember sitting in, I think, Tribute Hall, testing damage numbers of stuff because we didn't have it in the game. We didn't have, this was really kind of before they had spreadsheets and stuff, just trying to learn stuff. And now you can, any YouTuber or any person on Reddit can give you a full breakdown of what works with what does this, what does that. And even Bungie has done a pretty good job of giving us all that information in the game as well. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you want to take the time to push yourself to that or just experience trying to get better, I think is way, I don't want to say easy. I think it's very, very, very accessible for any player joining Destiny to become a, if you want to call it, a top 1% player. But I do think that top 1% player, that door is very, very, very wide open.
Thoughts from anybody else?
I agree. I think that you could. I think that anyone can be as good as the game if it's. I think all it needs is time and patience.
Yeah.
And I don't think that there's as big a skill gap as people seem to think that there is. I'm not saying that everyone can go in and solo a raid by no means, but I think that new players can still come in, jump into it, and putting in the time and like the resources that are available. Dim, like GG, you know what weapons you're looking for, you know where to get them from, like all of like the different ones, like to see what like the blueprints for your weapons. Of blue engram, that's it. I'm just thinking of all of these resources that are so easily available, YouTube tutorials as well. It's just, I think it's very accessible for new players to get stuck straight into it.
What?
I guess it also depends, I think, on like what the frame of reference of that question is. Because if they're saying like, are they trying to compete for a world's first raid? Because that's a totally different discussion.
That is different, yes.
If you're going up against
Absolutely.
Salt and Rowan and those guys, like, yeah, it's going to take a lot of time and dedication to get to that point. Like, people are very mechanically gifted at this game. If you want to get into the top 1% where you're consistently, you know, going through GM's first try and you're helping other people through the game, and there's a much bigger band and bracket of those players. If you're competing for top 100 raid placements consistently, that will take time and practice. I know very dedicated players, they're spending the ends of those seasons that we've been complaining about being boring, doing low man challenges and focusing on damage rotations and theory crafting what the DPS meta will be the following season so that they're prepared based on, you know, patch notes and nerfs and buffs and things that are coming down the line. I've been very involved in that community for a long time, and there's some amazingly intelligent players who study the game because they love it. And like that aspect, you absolutely, like, there will be a catch-up period. But I mean, like, to Cordy and Dan's points, like, there's top 10 lists of the best weapons in the game. There's ways to improve at PVE. There's guides for every single activity out there 10 times over. There's ways to optimize your loadouts and curate triple 100 stats and the best builds. I mean, you can catch up a huge percentage of that gap in weeks. Like, just if you want to seek out the resources, they're there. And then it just comes down to, you know, how you make the best out of the downtime towards the ends of the seasons. Like, we were all there at one point. I remember I switched from Xbox to PC and it felt like a completely different game. I felt like a total noob again, like trying to learn mouse and keyboard. And I remember just like dedicating time to the craft and being like, okay, I'm going to master this and I'm going to practice. And, you know, eventually, you know, you get to the point where we're holding a discussion talking about how the game could be harder. So,
yeah. So a question that came to mind during this question, what is an activity that you would point somebody toward to be like, if you're wanting to get really good at the game, if you're wanting to hit that above the helper band kind of level of skill, what activity would you point them to and be like, go throw your head against that wall for a while and then come see me?
How new are they?
Fairly new. Like, let's say within the last month, they just picked up Lightfall. Yeah, they just picked up Lightfall.
Literally go live in the Grandmaster playlist, in my opinion. Like,
yeah, I'd be putting them in like the even the Vanguard playlist, having those different levels of difficulties and getting to grips with how the artifact works, how to stun champions, that sort of stuff. Because I'm like, that is going to play into Grandmasters, raids, etc. Knowing how your weapons work.
The 5 under lock that they did last season in those like battlegrounds at boss rooms, I felt like would be a great starting point, and then progressing into Grandmasters and just living in there. Because I think once you understand like enemy behavior and you start to understand, like, I mean, you quickly discover what abilities in the game can handle the hardest content, whether it's Strand or Well or Devour, Invis, or Falcon, whatever it is. You quickly start to discover, okay, this is really powerful, even in like under-leveled content, and you start to understand like how to stay alive. And then you go into a normal raid and you're like, oh, dude. Like this is just this is easy, because like I can stay alive in Grandmasters getting one shot. Like now I can play way more risky and aggressive, and
I always told people who've not got experience in GMs and players of that nature is to go and do your Legend Lost sectors, and then once you can do them on Legend, then go do Master Lost sectors.
Get all your exotics.
Yep.
Yeah, and also you've got no one to to get you out of the shit sort of thing. You've got to rely on yourself, and then you'll learn how to stun the different champions. And then after that, once you've learned all that stuff, get into the dungeons, and then solo in the dungeons. Because I think all that can be done over a pretty short period. I think you can go from being brand new at the game, spending probably three to 4 weeks getting your gear, getting some decent weapons, and getting some of the exotics. Because let's be honest, there's only a few of the exotics that you need, isn't there? For say, if you pick up Hunter, you might need, let's just say, Gry Falcons and maybe Assassin's Cowl. Two good ones for new players. If you're on Warlock Starfire for now, for 4 days.
Yeah, you got 4 days. Less time when this comes out.
And maybe some braces is another good one for newer players and older players as well. And then Titan, Hoyle still, I would say, and maybe I don't know what
Buy Leap.
Yeah, I was going to say those legs.
Yeah, I forget about them.
Boots are
and I think once you've got all that, you can get in your lost sectors, learn how champions work, and like I say, you could probably start soloing dungeons then after a month, I think. Especially because it's so intuitive, Destiny.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
One thing leads to the other.
Yeah.
I almost wonder if Strand is kind of a detriment to learning in a sense, because the other subclasses, like, they did such a good job. Okay, you learn how to use solar, you make yourself radiant, now you have barrier, or you pick up an orb, now you're volatile, you can control a barrier. But like Strand, I feel like, is almost counterintuitive to learning, because you literally just chuck it at any champion type. It deals with barriers for 12 seconds, it deals with unstops and stuns them, and they can't fight back. Even overloads, you just suspend them for a second, now you can stun them again. Non-threat. And it's just like, I don't like calling for nerfs very often, but like, I feel like there needs to be some sort of cooldown implemented with the suspend mechanic specifically, because it unlike stasis, it's free. Like you like stasis, you can shatter when you start doing damage. It shatters them, and now they're back to their normal champion state. With suspend, you can damage them as much as you want, and unless you literally freeze them, which is they will not become unsuspended. Unstops become unstunned, but like they're a non-threat, and you don't have to really learn how the interactions with champions work with
Yeah.
that
You don't have to
subclass
learn
specifically.
you don't have to learn about like the wings lighting up and stuff like that, don't you? That you don't need to know anything about them. You can just throw a suspend grenade or put
Especially on a hunter.
your shield down. Yeah. 'Cause there's so many
two
people who
grenades, slam.
Yeah.
Then you've got the aspect that if you throw your grenade and then you do damage, then it gives you your grenade back just by shooting something.
Yeah.
Like,
and same with Titan.
insane.
I think Warlock's the worst one.
Yeah.
And
Hey,
I think
don't tell that to the YouTube comments, Bryn. They'll come after you. They will.
Yeah. But I remember when Champions for the first like 6 months or whatever, when they first come out, and people were like, why once it's stunned once, it won't stun again? And he's like, oh, you have to wait until the wings go down, or I don't think you don't have to tell that people anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just throw a suspend nade, it'll be all right. Yeah.
Final question of the night. Thank you guys so much for being on the show. Comes from Gray Fox, asking, with the Wednesday blog posts hitting all aspects in the game, especially with the recent ones tackling exotics and PVE, what are some changes that you personally are looking out for in the PVE sandbox that you're excited for?
Is this the part where I say I haven't read the article?
It's okay. It's completely fine if you did. So here's
I've skimmed over it. I saw there's a graviton buff.
There's a graviton, but there's a lot of different buffs. There's some fixes. One particularly to Thunderlord that I think is funny because it's the main DPS weapon for much of Ron right now, where it's when it hits a divinity bubble, it is actually doing double the crit damage right now, and so they're fixing that down to 1 next season.
So that's only with div then.
Yeah. So something that I'll start us off there.
I'm elitist anyway. I kick people if you use from the Lord. No, I'm not.
That's not what I was going to say, Granddad. But since we're here, something that I'm positive, I'm thinking about. So Strongholds is getting a damage reduction buff of 50% in PVE. Not only after you get a kill, you get restoration times 2 with that.
Any class.
They're also buffing Heart Shadow to make it easier to activate. And so I'm thinking, okay, you block, you got Heart Shadow, you got 50% damage reduction. You go up and you kill. You're blocking all the way up till you kill a thing. You're invisible and you get restoration. And it's basically a free getaway.
We're just so power crept, man.
I think so.
It's insane.
Personally,
same for the other one. What was it? No backup plans. You get an overshield on every shotgun kill, no matter whether you.
Oh my god! When I read that,
so here's something I'm thinking.
Sweet business as well.
Something that I'm thinking about in the future, because I was right about the Spider-Man with a shotgun thing with the aerial effectiveness nerf. So this is me putting it out there. This is my bet, is that they're going to hit damage reduction somewhere in the next few months, and they're putting these new perks on these exotics in preparation for that. So you actually have to build into it before they start taking that away naturally from resilience.
What would be a good? Because I agree with you. What do you guys think would be a good level of damage resist for it to be worth speccing into, but isn't overpowered anymore?
No more than 20.
Yeah, I think 20 is a good number, right?
Yeah. But 20 would have to be tier 10. Like, I think damage resistance is an issue in this game and always has been. I don't think it was as big of an issue before the Light 3.0 changes, because we didn't have instant overshields on every class and all the other stuff. It's just amplified that. Yeah, it's if we had never had Light 3.0 changes, I think damage resistance wouldn't be as big of a deal. Because we had protective light, but it wasn't. It wasn't as broken.
No,
so I think
no.
Any damage resistance in this sandbox is too much. But if we had to have damage resistance, and I had to make it worthwhile to at least spec into somewhat, I still think most people would take 20% at tier 10.
Because otherwise, you just go back to the recov intellect meta that we had for years. Dan, question: Was it about what we would want to see, or the ones we're most excited about that have been talked about already?
What are you most excited about that's been talked about already for the next season?
Starfire nerf, 1000%.
Yeah. Yeah, Starfire.
It is. The meta was fun,
Mm-hmm.
but it was like just so boring after a while, and it's so overpowered. Like, I'm surprised. I
It
cannot
was a long time
believe
coming.
that Hoyle got nerfed before Starfire got nerfed. Like, Hoyle was insanely
it's funny,
strong,
was
but
Starfire
good God.
like really strong? I don't remember Starfire seeing the usage rate as it has this season.
We're Guardians. We always find a way.
The last
I just don't remember
two-
everyone running Starfire during King's Fall, you know?
Well, because so Hoyle was really strong, and those bosses like Thunder Crash obviously is like just
Yeah.
it's a quick burst super, and Hoyle, I mean, you had your abilities up 24/7, so like in GMs, I mean, it was you chuck a nade and forget about it, because storm nades just track everything, they chained everything. Like you didn't even have to really do much. But no, I mean, Starfire it's been good for literally since Solar 3.0 came out and Fusions got that buff. I think people kind of caught on to it like about a season after that, and like for damage, it's just, I mean, look at the world's first team. I'm pretty sure they ran 6 warlocks because they just, I mean,
Well, Well's really powerful.
Well's really freaking powerful. If you're chasing 3 large orbs off of each other constantly, you have a well available at all times, which means you're not dying. Starfire is the most, if you know how to use Starfire in an ad clear setting, it's the most powerful ad clear we have in the game. It's the best DPS we have in the game. It enables literally solo Root of Nightmares damage by itself. Like, it's crazy how strong it is. I think that exotic's pretty much dead, and I could eat my words, but like the way that they were talking about it,
it's gone.
Developers said you might get 1 or 2 more grenades per damage phase. I was like, okay.
Yeah, I was like, oh shit.
That's a
I think
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons that it wasn't as popular as it has been this season, though, is because we've changed from like linears to rocket launchers. So that damage,
that's true.
that damage loop is more suited to throwing nades, you know, with auto-loading holster and demolitionist and stuff.
Because I agree. I was thinking about it the other day when they finally announced the nerf, and I was thinking, and I was like, Starfire has been in the game since season 2, I think, season 1 or 2, and it's never changed. It's always been, with the exception of Light 3.0 changing with Fusion Aids, it's always been the same. But
I mean,
of course,
that's that player
happening.
adaptation, right? That you were talking about. It. I mean, people started to discover, okay, damage over time weapons. You know, Touch of Flame adds a crazy amount of damage on those fusion grenades.
Massive.
Then you add in Demolitionist on a rocket to reload. All of a sudden, you have passive damage over time from Witherhorde. You are shooting a rocket. You're reloading the rocket with a grenade that does insane amounts of damage. And guess what? You've got that grenade back because you're passively doing damage, and you shoot another rocket. It's just like, it's all those things coming together, and that's like, to your point, that's the player floor and experience, like just rising over time, and like that player knowledge. Like, there's so many resources out there. It's almost like to the fault of the magic of Destiny, right? Because in D1, people would have their favorite exotic, they would have their favorite legendary weapon, and now we have those spreadsheets and we have that knowledge, and it's almost like if you're not running like the meta, people look at you weird, like, dude,
how do you
why are you using that?
Dude, I'm going in with glaive into everything. I do not care what the meta is. A glaive at my side, I'm just going in stabbing. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't equip such a flame either because I want the heat rises and Icarus dash to skip.
Fair.
Courtney, what about you? Oh, go ahead.
Granddad, are you one of those cheaters who swaps loadouts quickly?
He just said he was a pervert.
Self-proclaimed pervert.
Qwerty, what about you?
Destiny,
what are you looking for?
In the next season, I'm gonna have to say the Starfire nerf as well. And yeah, I think with like I didn't read the most recent articles, so like the Thunderlord. I know that Gravlance has had has had a buff as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be season of the Titans with that sweet business buff as well. Like, oh my god, no backup plans. I'm like,
it's going to be good. It's going to be good.
Yeah.
The explosive payload on that will make that into an anti-barrier chewing machine.
Yeah, I think that's going to be. I don't know about what people are thinking about it in PvP, but I think in PvE it'll be a lot of fun. Slap on an Actium war rig and just like
rev them up, boys. Yeah. Shout out to Mosh and Dak on that one. Rev them up.
But yeah, I'm not for the rest of it. I'm just I dread to say it, but like I'm anxious and excited to just see what's going to happen. More on the anxious side, but still excited.
It'll be interesting seeing what the stuff comes that falls through the cracks. We know every season something changes that isn't in the patch notes.
Yeah.
Well, if we have a repeat of what happened a few weeks ago when we had that patch, and then it was just all of a sudden everything else was like, oh yeah, by the way, we've also done all of this stuff, and I'm like,
we got something kind of like that though, from the Destiny 2 team account yesterday when the
world line,
right, the world line changes. So there was an error in the season 21 weapon changes preview. So world line 0, what it's going to be able to do, it's going to be able to chain into itself at least once, and then they said that it was getting heavy attack damage would be decreased by they said that initially it was shared the World Line Zero's heavy attack damage would be decreased by 25%, but the good news was that they're actually buffing it by 8.3%. So like still getting some of those.
I just want to fly with World Line again. I don't care about the damage. Just let me fly with it again.
Yeah.
World Line skating.
Yeah. Granddad, what about you?
Great, wasn't it? Yeah, I think even though I do love Starfire, I think it's had its time in the sun. I'll be because I love using like verities in on the in VOG, you know, for just throwing nades for days at Atheon. So I think that might shine. Sun braces as well. I know that's already popular, but I think it's a good time to try out some new some different exotics. And about the stronghold thing, was that something that it was going to debuff the enemy as well?
Yes, it's debuffing the enemy. So,
dude, that is going to be.
I'm calling it.
Broken. It could be really, really good.
I'm gonna be running strongholds. I'm gonna be running Heart Shadow. At that point, I don't know what class to maybe pair with it.Maybe you do solar. Maybe you do a bubble. But like honestly, that's gonna be gross. It's gonna be gross. And I can't wait to mess around with it the first couple of weeks before somebody goes, hey, maybe restoration ×1?
Yeah. In last season or the season before, and when it was Void Overload Nades, I made a point of soloing Glassway on each class, but with swords, and it was brilliant. You felt like you was aggressive. Do you know what I mean? Because you just three-peek, throw a nade. An overload champion, that little boss room, wait for him to get stunned, and then just three-peat around the corner and just absolutely destroy the overloads, because they're the only threat in that boss room, really. Trophy Hunter was mental. Fallen Guillotine on a warlock. And also the Tusk thing on a hunter was good as well. Really fast so strongholds, I think I'll mess about with them a lot.
Yeah. They also mention in like the section at the bottom of the article that there's also a big sword update coming with the goal of making guarding substantially more valuable. In those the article from this past week.
It's useless. Yeah, I mean you just don't even you will with strongholds, but right now nothing else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dan, what about you?
Nerve?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No. Dan, go ahead.
No, you go. No, you go.
Look,
it's you.
I'm doing the host thing.
I'm like, dude, let's go.
I'm doing the host thing, and I'm like, we're 2 hours and 11 minutes in. We gotta. I gotta edit this today. So, but Dan, what about you, man?
When you edit, will you take the bit out about me being a pervert?
No,
please?
I'm gonna keep that. If anything, Granddad, I'm gonna put more in.
Staying in now.
I'm gonna put more in. Just every time you talk,
Full screen.
every time you talk, it's gonna be like, first of all, I'm a pervert. Second of all, and then like whatever your point is.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm all for that.
Oh my god. Oh.
I'll have to change my Twitter bio.
Yeah.
Pervert.
Self-acclaimed pervert.
Self-acclaimed pervert, as heard on Destiny Digest episode 2012.
Oh, brilliant.
Epic Dan, what about you, sir? What are you looking forward to in next season's Sandbox?
I think we've all talked Starfire, so of course that.
Yeah.
I'm curious just to see what the artifact brings, since the artifact has such power over what. Like, we're all talking about what's going to rise and what's going to follow, but all that's going to be dictated off of the artifact. So it's going to be interesting what the artifact decides to bring up. It could be strongholds, it could be whatever. So I'm excited.
Even if
to
it's
see
Overload Sword, you're gonna be
Even
using
in
strongholds a
season-
hell of
yeah.
a lot next season.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
Arc would probably be on next season's artifact as well.
it should be Arc and Void. No, I guess
Is
we
it
got
status?
Void Strand.
Status, yeah.
Yeah.
Strand probably still.
Yeah.
Arc and Stasis, but
Yeah.
it should be
Focusing lands.
interesting.
I reckon it'll
Also,
come back.
I'm interested to see if they bring out new exotics. I know last season they didn't give us new exotics armor, so it should be interesting if they continue that trend or go back to giving us one per character.
We're also getting a mission that gives us a hand cannon and explains the whole arc thing next season as
the
well.
veil.
Yeah. So we'll see how.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys don't know what the veil is? That's
I didn't read the leaks.
So
I didn't read
embarrassing.
the leaks on that one.
oh, I didn't either. The story was so clear though.
Yeah, the story was.
The story really
Fine.
just wrapped it up nicely. So I don't know.
Look, man, I've done psychedelics.
Imagine not knowing. Imagine.
I've done psychedelics. I can take a guess. But anyways,
I just don't know why they didn't call it the blind
Dan-
instead of the veil.
I was going to spiral this episode another hour by mentioning a well nerf, and I won't, you know.
yeah. Well, we'll have
I'll
to have
let
you
your
guys back.
editing live.
We'll have to have you guys back.
Yeah.
So it's been a pleasure to have you all on, and I hope you had a good time. Talking about the state of Destiny 2 PVE. Why don't
Perverts.
yeah, that's
State of
staying in.
Destiny
That's staying in.
perverts.
If anything that's getting clipped, I'm gonna send it. Like, I will take time out of my day to make sure.
Be like, hey, Grandad, tell me a little bit about yourself. Pervert.
I'm a pervert. Second of all,
Every time.
We're all gatekeeping elitist perverts.
Yeah, we-
we'll just leave it at
Yeah. Yeah.
Pervert.
Yeah. Beautiful.
That's it. That's the clip.
that's it. That's the clip.
Yeah.
All right. So, why don't you guys go through and tell us where we can find you on the internet? Above, let's start with you.
You can find me at AboveTP on Twitter, where I post terrible elitist takes, and you can also find me over at twitch.tv/above. We just have a lot of fun in the game. Try and keep things fresh and fun.
Cordy, what about you?
I on Twitch, Twitter, and what's the other one? TikTok. And it is usually just me swearing, throwing, chilling, and thinking that I'm hilarious. And it's talkquirky to me _ on all of those platforms.
Granddad, what about you? You pervert.
On Twitter, on Twitch. I think I've got TikTok. It is at @GrandadGaming_, where you can find me being hilarious, a pervert, and also PVE helps and that sort of nature. Thank you.
Hell yeah. Epic Dan, what about you, sir?
You can find me at EpicDan22 pretty much everywhere. Twitch, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube. I think that's all of them. A lot of Destiny, sometimes other games as well. Just hopefully not ranting about Destiny.
My name's Danfinity. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Danfinity, where the I's are L's. You can also find me on Twitch 3 days a week, twitch.tv/Danfinity, helping Guardians out through in-game activity. If you would like to support the show, remember to rate, review, comment, and share on your podcast platforms of choice. Anything you say helps us in the algorithm. If you'd like to give $3 a month to help keep the lights on, head on over to coffee.com/Danfinity. That is ko-fi.com/Danfinity. All the links will be in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you find what you're grinding for.